I'm going to talk about the execution theme today, reflecting on personal experiences on how to fail, how to succeed, and what I've kind of felt along the journey. And most of this happens outside of your comfort zone. I started as an entrepreneur back in '99 by quitting my stable job at Nokia and starting my first own company. And ever since then, it's been this uncomfortable learning journey, dealing with tough emotions, tough situations. And what surprised me the most is that you end up in a tough spot when you fail, but you also end up in a tough spot when you succeed. That they're not equally easy. Succeeding is also really, really hard, and coping with success is really, really hard. But this has been most of my entrepreneurial journey for the past over 10 years. These are most of the companies that I've worked with. Some of them I've founded, some of them I've been the CEO, and in some of them I've just been an owner, board member, advisor, something like this. I picked a couple here in the middle just out of curiosity, since these are kind of interesting companies, interesting stories. IRC Galleria up there is a social networking site in Finland. Used to be the biggest social networking site used by teenagers or 20-something-year-olds. Had about 1 million weekly visitors, all in Finnish language, and 650,000 registered users. And out of those registered users, we managed to extract quite a bit of profit and revenue, because the amount of users who paid us money was incredibly high. That we had a conversion rate in the paying customer of 86%. So basically everybody was pretty much paying us money. And we managed to achieve that through a similar kind of iterative way as Vladimir was just talking about. IRC Galleria we sold to Habbo Hotel in the spring of 2007. And since then it's been bought back by the management, and they continue to run it, compete against Facebook and so forth. Web of Trust there is another interesting Finnish company. Makes a security plugin for Firefox and for other browsers as well. Has about 30 million, 40 million customers. Gathers information about all the websites in the interwebs pretty much. They have this reliability and reputation information, like how reliable any web store is. Do they sell good stuff or no? Can you give your money to them or not? And this company for a long time was not making any revenue. They were having a really tough time figuring out how to monetize this thing. And then we decided to try out selling this data as a kind of trust reputation database into other companies who use it for their own products. And the first 2 deals that the company managed to secure were Google and Facebook. So now Google and Facebook buys the reputation data from Web of Trust, and they continue developing that idea also with other partners and clients. Doppler, a company that I worked as the chief operating officer of, was a company for active world travelers, people who jet around the world and spend a fabulous amount of money to 5-star hotels. We sold that company to Nokia in September of 2009, and again, it was an iterative journey of trying to figure out how to monetize these millionaire travelers. We, for example, made money by selling luggage and selling Eurostar train tickets and making all sorts of marketing tricks on the way. Stardoll, originally Finnish company, by far the biggest website in the world that deals with dressing up, making up virtual paper dolls and sharing these designs between each other. Has 100 million users. So teenagers all over the world use Stardoll for making up virtual paper dolls that typically represent some celebrity like Rihanna or Lady Gaga or whatever, and then they share these designs between each other. The company makes a lot of money by selling virtual clothes, of course, and Christmas sales is a big thing for them. Christmas sells a lot of virtual clothes. In the early days, I was part of advising the company, figuring out the business model and iterating how it's going to work and what they're going to sell. And nowadays, it's a lot more successful. When I started with them, they had less than 100,000 customers, and now they are above 100 million. DLE Registry is a new company that we just established this spring, and we are betting on the Chinese market quite a bit there. In a couple of decades, there's going to be 1 billion people in Europe and 1 billion people in North America and South America combined. And Asia and Africa will have 8 billion people. So really the future of the world is going to be built around the Indian Ocean and unfortunately not around Europe or not around the Americas anymore. The Indian Ocean is going to be the center of the world in upcoming decades, and DLE Registry is capitalizing on that opportunity by selling domain names. The world has never had Chinese domain names like .com, .fi, .ee. These are all domain names, and we've never had them in Chinese characters. And we are one of the first companies in world history that's going to come out with Chinese domain names, .website and .online spelled in Chinese. And we're going to start selling these in a couple of months. And our expectation is that we're going to sell these by the millions, but obviously we don't know. We will probably find out soon enough, but let's see. Getting one of these domain names is an excruciating application process. You have to fill an application about 600 pages long, and you have to pay fees for about 1 million euros. So our 2 domains is 2 million euros, and we also have a third one. So we have to pay the money up front, and only later on we know if it's going to work or not. Let's see. Interesting startup. Applifier, the last on the list, is one of the gaming-related companies where I've been a minor owner and an advisor, and they are doing a cross-promotional network, promoting, for example, inside Facebook, promoting to the players of a police game, they promote the robbery game, and to the players of the robbery game, they promote the Cowboys and Indians game, and so forth. So it forms a network of players who get cross-promoted content to other games. When Applifier started this business, it took them about 100 days to reach an audience of 51 million. And nowadays it's up somewhere above 200 million, the audience that they are reaching. And it's a quite nice business that they've managed to build around social gaming and now also entering the mobile devices. So just some of the companies that I've been involved with, and they once asked me to do a summary of what I've been up to over the years, and this is it. I started in '99, ever since then 13 rounds of risk capital, 5 exits, 1 bankruptcy, and a couple of other really significant failures where we thought that we were going to build something that's going to change the world, and bollocks. It amounted to nothing. We got nothing done except perhaps some learning. This is my first company that I started in '99 by quitting my job at Nokia, and I had a couple of friends that we had been playing really old school online games with. And we were almost teenagers. I was 21. I was actually kind of a middle-aged guy in that group. There were people younger than me as well. And we were thinking that we are pretty clever, that we understand the upcoming internet in '99. And we think that the internet is going to be a social place. And our vision was that someday the internet will be full of social applications. People will share photos and share files, and they will chat and have forum discussions in the internet, and they will play games together. And of course, a lot of this was not true in '99. People just went online to read news and do this kind of stuff, and you couldn't even comment on the news. But we started by writing a massive business plan. I slept on the office floor for about a week and wrote a business plan around 80 pages or so. And we pitched that to the VCs, and they gave us 5 million euros, just without a product, just a plan and just a team. They thought that the social internet is a good idea. Go figure. And we started building these products. One of the first products that we built was called presence information. It was this product that you could send small text updates, 160 characters, to the people who follow you, and we designed the product to be the kind of product that you can update it like today I'm going to the beach, who's coming with me, and this kind of presence information, like where are you, what you're going to do. And nobody used this. This was a complete failure, like 0 revenue, almost 0 users. We only used it ourselves internally in the company. And we built 3D worlds, we built file swapping systems, threaded forum discussions, these kind of things. We had around 35 engineers working for the company, and we burned through 5 million of risk capital financing, 5 million euros, even though we got this back in the day where the Finns were still using the marks. I remember all of that money arriving to my bank account, to my personal bank account, because the company didn't have a bank account yet. And so I had about 30 million marks in my bank account, and I got a couple of these like slips out from the ATM that tell the amount of money that I have in the bank, and hold on to that. Anyways, this ended up in a horrible bankruptcy. The company completely failed. This was my first company and so far my only bankruptcy. And we filed for bankruptcy in August of 2002. So about 3 years later, 2.5 years later, we had burned through most of the money, and the party was over. No customers, or at least not enough. Of course, we had a few, but nowhere nearly enough. And we kind of fell between the gap of being able to raise a first round of financing, but never being able to raise the second round of financing. And this is our board and advisors and founders in 2001. And there's some famous faces in there. There's the current EU Commissioner for Economic Affairs, for example, standing there. And there's something like maybe 4 professors from different universities, 1 guy from the management of NVIDIA Corporation, and a couple of other senior big names. So this company was a combination of venture financing, eager young talent, and then these senior advisors who had seen and experienced a lot, and still we failed. I'm here standing next to Professor Luostarinen with the black beard, and we are kind of competing who's looking older. He's about 61, I'm about 21, 22, around that age. And you can partially see from the expression of my face like how failing feels like, how you slowly creep towards death. So we made multiple mistakes with the company, and why we ended up failing and why we ended up filing for bankruptcy. One obvious mistake was to be a little bit ahead of the market. In 99, in 2000, even in 2001, and nobody wanted these damn social applications, and nobody wanted the internet to be a social place. Back then, there were only like telecommunications companies and media companies who used the web for basically pouring in content that they write for other media anyways, and they had these news portals, and that was pretty much it. There was some gaming, but the gaming wasn't really like extensively social in the early 2000s. There were only the first MMO games coming out, like Assurance Call and those early, like EverQuest 1, and these first kind of really big MMO social games. Maybe a little bit of Counter-Strike was around, and Counter-Strike clans playing against each other. But anyways, we were a bit ahead of the market. And I also made a lot of mistakes myself as a young CEO, that this was my first time being ahead of a company, being a founder, and I didn't know that much about what I was doing, that I made a lot of management mistakes, leading people by controlling their actions too much, having a negative influence on people, having negative control on people, basically being the CEO who wants to know about every little thing that goes on in the company and you need to report to me. Completely kills the whole company. Don't do it. Don't ever do it. And if you see somebody doing that, complain and stop him. So being too early, my own mistakes. And there was also the question of market failure at the same time. We started in 99, huge boom, euphoric.com economy, and then around March of 2000, the market crashed. And all the investors who were really interested in investing a second follow-up round into our company suddenly were not so very interested. They were all out of money, and some of them even went bankrupt. But this was a really frustrating experience for me personally, that as a young founder, I had invested more than 100,000 euros of my own money into the company, and most of it was debt, that I had borrowed the money from a bank. And when the company went bust, obviously I needed to move out of my nice Helsinki city apartment to a really, really crappy area in Espoo. And I still owed the money to the bank, so I needed to pay it back. I was quite depressed there for maybe 2 months, ended up going to the gym so much that I lost 30 kilos of weight in 6 months. I came down from a bloated, fat guy weighing 100 kilos, came down to a slim guy weighing 70 kilos in under 6 months. And I exercised a lot. I tried to somehow work out the depressing feeling of failure out of my system. And I created this financial Excel, how much money I need to save, how much money I can spend, and how quickly I can pay the banks back. And as it turns out later on, that was a smart thing to do, that I almost lost my credit rating information, but because I adhered so strictly to my own financial planning, I was just barely able to pay the money back to the bank. And actually what saved me in the end was borrowing some of this money from my relatives. And of course, coping with this is emotionally quite tough, and not that many people survive it intact, that they fail, they try, they fail, and they never try again. And my second company was much better. It was called Magenta, and it was in this kind of shape. So my second experience as an entrepreneur was going from a completely failed bankruptcy to a company that was already existing and was doing really, really well, as you can see. It was this hosting company doing cloud services, early versions of cloud services, and it was making more losses than it had revenue. And I knew the investors who had invested into this company, and they were saying to me that, look, you're a pretty smart guy. There's this company that's probably going to fail any day now. You've just committed your first bankruptcy. The second one won't even hurt. You know what it's like. Please come in and replace the current CEO and buy a share of the company and become an entrepreneur again. And I said, yeah, what the heck, this is the best sales pitch ever. I'm gonna do it. And in just 6 months, it turns out that we managed to turn the company around from deep losses into profit, like a zero profit level, just barely profitable. And this was in autumn of 2003, my first exit. After turning the company around, a bigger publicly listed corporation bought it from us. And this became my first exit, and I managed to pay back some of that debt that was haunting me. We managed to do that turnaround basically by going from customer to customer with our hand extended and asking that, hey guys, we are completely going bankrupt, like any day down we can disappear. Is there any way that you could pay us double or triple the money that you are paying now, and we'll provide you with the same service? And most of these customers, they said, yeah, sounds good, that even if we pay double, your services are still pretty good, and they are actually just market priced, that we don't feel like we're overpaying. And this was because the company had generated those deep losses partially because it was over-investing in production quality all the time. It ran the latest equipment with the latest system. It had really good engineers, and it was over-investing in the production all the time and just asking way too little money out of a service that was actually pretty good. This company back in the day was running Habbo Hotel globally. Like all of Habbo Hotel was run by this company, and also other big websites, big consumer websites in Northern Europe and in Finland were run by this company. And most of these customers, of course, they didn't want us to disappear, because if we would disappear, they would disappear as well, pretty much. So they ended up paying double or triple, and that completely saved this company. But what happened inside the team is that success was feeding success. That emotionally, when we were recognizing a tough spot, that it is not optional for us to change. It's completely mandatory. We have to change, or otherwise we are dead in the water in less than a week. And once we got the first success, it started feeding other successes. We became developing war stories about how we turned this company around, how we got yet another customer paying us triple, and we've developed an internal culture of really like speeding it up, leveraging the wins that we generated one iteration at a time, and slowly in 6 months, or I don't know if that's slowly or not, but in 6 months turning the company around. And what happened in the team was this kind of coordination. So people who were really emotionally like shut up and really tight and just minding their own business, not wanting to talk about the troubles that the company has, those kind of people like completely opened up. They became a team. They beautifully coordinated what they're going to do. They shared these winning stories between each other, and the end result was quite nice. this is something that I've been able to repeat later on, that this was my first case as a change leader, and everything that I learned here from the success, I've been lucky enough to be able to replicate and use later on in other companies that have needed changing. And what I've learned is that you do learn from failures, but you also learn from successes. That sometimes success is a better teacher because you at least know what works, and you can try to build on what works and replicate the success that way. Couple of thoughts on like generally reflecting what I think about nowadays when I build these companies. One of the things that I think about is the pace of change. Like how rapidly our market changes, how rapidly the situation with competitors and customers changes, and the general change, the general pace of change in society these days it's pretty strict, and it's not going to slow down. We're not going to have many of those new businesses where you have the luxury of planning, a luxury of doing like a 100-year plan like the Japanese companies used to do, and then following on the 100-year plan. Not going to be possible. Really hard to predict even 2 years ahead, like we just heard from Vladimir. It's going to be quicker in the future than what it is now, that if we think that the change is rapid today, just wait 5 years and think again. It looks like the good old days. It's accelerating all the time. So in many ways, the situation of a new company resembles this kind of survival situation. That there's an expedition of bold people, and they are heading to the great unknown, and they can't have plans for every single situation. They only have parts of the plans. They know that we're going to climb that mountain, and probably we are going to go past that valley there, but nothing else is really known. They might encounter a storm, they might encounter like, I don't know, rabid moose who come and try to stab them with their antlers, or maybe some of the team members, they fall down and hurt themselves and they have to cope with the situation on the fly. So there's a lot that they can't plan, and it resembles a survival situation because every new startup starts with being under the immediate threat of dying. Startups are temporary organizations that never survive unless they discover a way out, much like an expedition needs to survive the trip. So it is quite chaotic, and it involves taking risk, and it involves failing fast and frequently. This is a video, Michael Jordan on failure. You might have seen this. I like this a lot because the message is quite good.
I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed.
So he considers failure to be educational and success to be inspirational. And he builds this kind of mechanism that each time he misses a shot and loses 300 games, there's something that he can learn out of that and something that he can perfect. And this is kind of the emotional stubbornness that you might need as an entrepreneur if you are here for the long term. If you're building multiple companies simultaneously and after one another, like I've been doing since '99. This kind of emotional stamina that you need, and you need mechanisms how to cope with the constant failure. Like most of the stuff that you do inside one company doesn't work, and quite frequently the entire company doesn't work, and they fail. So there's some stuff that we've been developing over the years that helps us to cope with this chaos and helps us to cope with the emotional stress. Like, for example, a common feeling in startups is that people feel like their efforts are not enough, that they try to do their best, but nothing is enough. And they feel exhausted, they overwork themselves, they feel emotionally really strained. And if you are a startup leader, you have to be able to cope with that and have to be able to talk with people who are constantly disappointed, constantly overworked, and constantly frustrated like hell. You somehow need to give them support as the leader. So there are a couple of things that you can do. One of the things is that if the world looks really chaotic and you can't predict the pace of change, you can't predict all the circumstances, it's going to be hard to operate, and there's going to be plenty of surprises on the way, and it looks like completely blurred insanity chaos at times. Still, if you look this picture close enough, if you just really check the details, there is something in here that is really clear, really stable, and really tranquil. And there always is inside a chaos, always is something to concentrate on. And one of the biggest things for you as a leader of any kind of high-risk venture or any kind of new company is to focus on goals, targets, and objectives. So at least you should try to have the kind of situation that you are leading this expedition into chaotic unknown, but at least you could work on the fact that all of the people in your expedition, they would know what is your mission, and they would know at least 3 of your most important goals. Like maybe your expedition is on a mission to climb that mountain, and the objectives are to survive, to get out of here alive. The next objective might have to do with some research on the way, and the third one would be like helping a local village that happens to be near the base camp. These can be your 3 objectives, and everybody needs to know this. This is something that objectives bring clarity to chaos, and you can use them as a leadership tool. And in times of high emotional distress, they are kind of comforting that you at least know what you're going to try to achieve here. This doesn't mean that the objectives shouldn't change. They should change right away when you have data that indicates that you need to change them. So you might have a new set of objectives and a new mission like every week. But every time you do, everybody needs to know that. You need to be clear on that. One particular objective for startups to think about is how they differentiate, how they are different from the rest. Because the fact is that if they are not different from the rest, nobody's ever going to give any chance to startups whatsoever. If I establish a new movie theater that looks and smells and feels and costs as much as all the movie theaters that are existing right now, what the heck is my competitive advantage? How do I differentiate from the rest? I don't. And it's going to be really, really hard to succeed with my new startup. So being different is kind of a life and death question to startups. And this can be quite emotionally distressing as well, coming up with creative ways to be different. But if you are this different, if you are a freak that comes and haunts you in your dreams, pretty much, even this is much, much better than being the same kind of blue glass like everybody else is and not being different at all. This is much better. Be colorful even if it means that you are a dork, or you are a freak, or you're the asshole. Being an asshole is better than being nobody. Much, much better. The asshole lives, the nobody dies. Basically, this is the situation for startups. So there is the kind of methodology behind this and an approach that we've developed that helps us to cope. And it starts with abandoning this kind of old planning, that we don't write business plans anymore. I've now personally raised 13 rounds of venture funding, and for about the past 5 years, I have not written business plans. No. I've closed the venture funds without a business plan, without a written business plan. We only do presentations, we only do data, we only talk with the investors, and they invest despite of us not having a business plan in written format. We might do a business plan occasionally for the sake of practice, that we clarify our own thoughts and we do it as a thinking kind of exercise. And as soon as it's done, we throw it away because it's already obsolete. And instead of writing 60-page business plans, we write 1-page lean canvases. There's a tool called Lean Canvas, a very good one for startups. And if you need to rewrite your canvas, it's just 1 page, and you can rewrite that in 30 minutes instead of like many days for the business plan. And obviously the secret to success in my experience is iterative development, just like Vladimir said in the previous presentation. Doing one version, doing something, see if it works, and then doing it again and again and again and again. And somewhere at the top there's something brilliant awaiting you in there, but you can't discover that unless you iterate in a rapid kind of way. This actually is the basic process of lean startups, and this is also the process that I follow pretty much in all of my companies these days. The important parts are in the red. So we go through these loops of build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. And we try to go through the entire loop in 1 day. If we can't do it in 1 day, at least 3 days. And if we can't do it in 3 days, we're being really lousy, but at least aim for the week. And if it's anything longer than a week, we are in basically deep shit because of that. We need to be able to learn faster, preferably faster than 1 week. And you can think of big companies that they have projects that go on for 2 years easily, and they are basically delaying their learning by 2 years. Startups can't afford that. The founders will starve to death in 2 years. They don't have enough food to eat. You need to develop more rapidly, and trying to do this in a couple of days throughout the loop every time is a good starting point. So a normal startup week might look like this kind of exercise that we decide that what we're building here, we don't know. We don't know what we're building yet. It's not working. Not enough money is coming in. We need to learn what is wrong. We need to think about what kind of measurements and data will teach us what is wrong. And then the last thing that we consider is what do we need to build to get this data. And then we execute. So we plan starting from the learning like this way, and we execute the other way. And then we plan again this way and execute the other way. And we do this week after week after week after week after week after week after week until we decide to quit or until we succeed. Sounds pretty easy, right? So to cope with this emotionally, you need an attitude of boldness, basically. Just have the guts to do it. I think it's Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, and PayPal as well, who said that he thinks of growth entrepreneurship as a process where you just jump off a cliff and you build the airplane on the way down. And that's pretty accurate what it feels like at times. But just building up tolerance for risk and assuming that you are going to fail, just cope with it, also helps you emotionally to actually survive the experience, that you don't go to sleep every day crying. You just go to sleep crying like maybe once a month, and that's better than every day at least. So what I'm saying that this especially really high risk growth entrepreneurship is an extreme sport, and it's very hard to learn it by studying it, very hard to learn it by just observing it. The best way is just to get started immediately and then iterate your way out. And one of the things that you will need on the way as kind of a tool is your creativity. We are pretty slim on time, I think, so I'm not going as deep into this as I originally planned, but let's visit the topic anyways. Creativity is one of my top 5 tools that I use with every company I work with, because it's an endless abundance of new ideas, of new things that we can try out, of new variations that we can mix and match together. And creativity is like absolutely essential for startups. And here's one of the thoughts why it's important, and one of the thoughts that helps kind of illustrate to get it. You all know how teachers in school have taught us that they give us a math problem, for example. What's 2 plus 2? I want the correct answer. And then from little kids upwards to university level, we always solve problems, and we always solve problems by deductive thinking. That we have the math problem, 2 plus 2. We start with a range of possible solutions. We think about it a little, we do one calculation, we've deducted some of the possible answers away. We calculate some more, we think some more, now there's only a few possible answers left. And then we do the final set of calculations, and ta-da, we have the final answer. The teacher is happy, we get 10 points from the exam. And this is what we've been doing throughout our schooling pretty much. We've been thinking in a deductive way, always solving problems and always solving them by deductive thinking. We never do it the other way. This is a test that a couple of British and American psychologists, namely Sir Ken Robinson, have been doing with people of different ages. And they give people pen and paper and ask them to write down as many possible uses for a paper clip that they can possibly think of. How many of you have heard about this test? There's quite a few. Good. Typically people write down maybe 13, maybe 15 answers that you can clip paper with paper clip, that's one. And they come up with 15 and then they run out of options. They don't know what to think anymore, and okay, the test ends up with a result of 15. Fair enough. There's a group of people that always, when they are tested, 98% of them gets more than 200 answers. And with more than 200 answers, you score at a genius level in creativity according to this kind of testing. And this group of people is kindergarten kids. And 98% of them, they get more than 200 answers. And they don't have any constraints on what to do with paperclips. They say that I can straighten up the paperclip and I can puncture my own eyes. Correct answer, I don't want to know how you thought of that, but still correct answer. And then they answer something like, paperclips are wonderful ingredients in baking. Just have lasagne all over, littered with paperclips, and stuck it in the oven. It makes for beautiful lasagne. Again, correct answer. You might not be able to eat it, but at least it's quite interesting. Probably smells really bad, burning plastic and all. Then they come up with a different range of answers that they kind of abandon the idea of what is a paperclip, that they redefine the question and they reinterpret the question in a different kind of way. So they answer, for example, that the paperclip is half a kilometer long, it's made out of rubber, and it's spewing milk from the inside. Again, completely correct answer. Nobody said that the paperclip has to be this kind of small item. Part of this test is that you don't show a real-life paperclip, you just ask the question. And then kids also answer stuff like, paperclip is made out of love and you can clip hearts with it. Really abstract, really hard to grasp, really creative, but again, a correct answer. And then they go back and forth between these kind of themes. They think of all possible uses to do with the paperclip, but they also redefine the paperclip in all possible meanings and all possible variations. And they combine these two and easily come up with 200 answers. The best children who do this test come up with more than 1,000 easily. And they only get to 1,000 because time is running out. They would come up with much more than 1,000 if you allow them to continue for like a week. They would come with tens of thousands probably. Okay, kindergarten kids, they get 200. People in elementary school level typically get 75, maybe 100. People in high school get about 35. And once we are adults, graduated from the university, we have 15 left. Yes, there's something in the school system that eats away this kind of creative thinking. And obviously you would need to combine both. You need to combine deductive thinking with divergent thinking. This is called divergent thinking. Thinking about different alternatives and different alternative meanings. And you need to combine these two, because obviously it's not going to help you if you come up with 200 wrong answers. You still need the correct answer at some point, but you need to have the creativity to redefine the question and interpret it in a different kind of way. So this is a very frequently used tool in growth entrepreneurship. We use this kind of thinking like almost daily when we consider what to test out next, what to iterate next. These are some of the competencies that we use to replace academic qualifications. Like when growth companies are hiring and somebody has a degree in engineering. That doesn't mean much to growth companies. I have a technical degree, I have a business degree. I'm one of these hybrids that used to be technical and then turned to the dark side of business. And now I'm a Sith Lord in the dark side of business, according to technical people pretty much. But still, academic qualifications, they don't mean much to growth companies. And there are other competencies that might be better. Competence to interpret meaning, competence to take action, competence to change, cope with change, manage change, lead change, and relational competence, meaning relations between people, but also relations in systems, that you see the causality in systems and you can consider big, complex things and see the relations in there. So these competencies, they mean more to growth companies, I think, than academic qualifications. And we primarily use attitude, willingness to learn, willingness to fail, and these kind of competencies as the primary compass when we are hiring people. They mean more to us than a PhD degree in psychology or whatever. Of course, there are exceptions always. The school system, I already kind of talked it down quite a bit, but let's talk it down a little bit more. The other thing besides deductive thinking that they've done to us over the years is that they've always had us solving problems. We are never defining the problems. They never ask us to do the kind of exams that have almost unlimited material, and then the question is, according to the material, what is the problem? This defines 90% of your grade. Then the next question is, what's the answer to the problem that you just defined? This accounts for 10% of your grade. we could totally do these kind of exercises starting from kindergarten upwards, and we could develop the ability of people to define problems and to interpret really large, varied, complex data, abstract data, some in qualitative format and some in quantitative format. But we don't do this. We teach people to always solve the problem and typically solve it in a deductive thinking way. Let's skip that out of time. Typically the first time when a student is asked to define a problem for real is when the student is doing a doctoral thesis. This is, in some sciences, this is the first time when they ask you to seriously define a new problem. Like before this, you've just done the work of a pocket calculator, always solving the problem, and now they ask you to do something else. And there are only some sciences that develop the student's ability to define problems that do it really well. One of them is the medical schools, that they need to teach medical professionals how to do a diagnostic procedure, how to interpret complex data and figure what the hell's wrong with this patient. And veterinarian doctors even do it with animals that can't speak, that you have an unconscious pig lying on the floor and you need to figure out what the heck's wrong with the pig. And this is an abstract process. It's not precise science in a way that you maybe poke the patient, you maybe talk to the patient if they can talk back, you maybe read some scientific articles, you take a couple of tests, you might even talk to the relatives, and out of all this abstract stuff, you decided, okay, now I define the problem, and this is probably the problem. Let's try to medicate it. Let's try to solve it. But this kind of ability to define problems is not taught by so many schools. Some of the law schools, they also teach this ability, but some of them do not. Engineering schools are notoriously bad at teaching their students to define problems. Again, a very important ability that helps you to cope in chaos, that you can look at all the chaos and define the problems, brings clarity, brings focus in the chaos. The military also teaches this to a degree that they need soldiers who are capable of acting under pressure and acting when the primary plan fails, the secondary plan fails, and the tertiary plan fails. What do you do after that? They need people who can cope and who can instantly think on their feet. So they teach techniques how they can define new set of objectives, new problems on the fly. I'm actually really low on energy today because since Saturday morning I've only slept for about 6 hours, and that was because I was in a forest wearing a camouflage suit, chasing guys with a gun all throughout Saturday and Sunday nights, and feeling a little bit tired. Sorry about that. But this is a good school of thought that teaches you what happens when you think you have a plan, and then you arrive at the mission area and everything blows to hell. Then you have nothing, and suddenly you need to come up with something. So some of the methods that they use are really useful in coping with rapidly changing circumstances and taking control of your own emotions. Some soldiering schools, they drive their students to the limit of their emotional capacity. Like they strain the guys and girls so much that they can't take anymore, and they completely break down as humans. Some go cry, some go catatonic, some become really aggressive. And that's a really, really useful experience if you've ever done something like that in your life, to know what happens to you when you are completely burned to the end. And if you know what happens and how it happens, you can actually use that as a quite powerful tool. I, for example, become a little bit aggressive, but extremely negative. That when I am strained to the end, I will say to any proposal, I will say, no way, never going to work. That's a horrible idea, sod off, and I become ultra negative, and I want to be just quietly on my own, and if somebody comes to bug me, I'm quite aggressive and shoot down their ideas immediately. Not a very good emotional state to be in if you try to build up these companies. But it's useful to know what happens to you. This is the last thing, and then we are pretty much out of time. I started with explaining how I failed in '99 with my first company, Taika. And I made a bunch of human interaction and leadership mistakes myself because I was over-controlling what the people in my company were doing in a very negative fashion. I basically had built a culture that was here in death. It was a culture that had no clarity of goals and objectives. Nobody knew what to do, what's our mission, how to do it. remember we were building the social internet back in '99, and we had no customers, nobody wanted our product, we didn't know what the heck we were doing, goals were unclear, so we were in the negative side of this one. And also human interaction was on the negative side, because I was over-controlling people, I was being a good micromanager and a good controlling overlord who wants to get involved in every little detail that goes into the company. So our culture pretty much, thanks to my involvement, was nearing the spiral of death. And this axis here, human interaction, means that you can openly share feedback, you can share learning, you can inspire people, it's easy to talk to people, it's easy to share even tough critique, even if you have something negative to say to people, it's easy to say to them. They are willing to learn together, they are really open to talk about things. Goals and objectives means the clarity of goals and objectives. Everybody knows what they need to do, how they need to get it done. Everybody is really motivated, they understand the goals and so forth. If you are only in the positive territory regarding human interaction and you have no clarity of goals, you are basically an organization of happy drunks. You consume a lot of champagne and you have a lot of fun, but nothing ever gets done because nobody knows what the goal is. And if you are in the other end of the scale, having a very high clarity of goals and no human interaction, then you are basically in a military organization in a kind of a Nazi way, that you get new written orders like every morning, and people just give you written orders and don't talk to you, just go execute on the orders. And you're in a culture of very little human warmth, but very clear goals. And the only way that you can succeed pretty much is that you build up your culture on the top corner, positive on both fields. And actually this is how I define leadership nowadays. If somebody asks me what is leadership, I say leadership is goal-oriented interaction. It is goal-oriented interaction. We always have goals, we always have our mission, and we try to get that done through interaction with other people. We as a group interact together to try to get the goals done. Leadership is goal-oriented interaction. And the reason why I've drawn an arrow towards death there is that when you build up a company culture in the positive territory and the culture encounters chaotic circumstances, circumstances change, your plans fail, nothing goes according to what you thought, it starts to slowly drag itself towards death. And if you start with your culture being here in that area and you encounter the first mistake, you are dead instantly because you started so close to death. But if you start from up there, you can handle a lot of chaos, you can cope with a lot of uncertainty, and you have a long way to travel until your culture and organization is basically arrived at death. So I always try to build it up there, and I always ask people what we have to improve in these areas, and we really try to work hard to be up there, because that's the best tool that we can have to arm ourselves to cope with change and to handle the chaos and to handle the constant iterations and the constant failures that we have to face pretty much every day. Culture is our savior, and it's a tool that we can use. This was the last thing, and sorry I've used so much time. Thank you.
All right, still a few questions from the public. Anyone raise their hands?
This is the whole presentation. If it's easier to ask questions, that you remember it better, right, like this.
I have a question about market validation. Based on your experiences, do you have any hints how to avoid ending up dealing only with early adopters and being blinded by them?
I frequently see the mistake that companies kind of recruit their most eager fans to be the test group. And then they have their best, most eager fans as the base of all testing and testing what they should do next. And this, of course, is very close, dangerously to failing, because anything that you do, they will simply love it. I mean, look at me, I've got the new iPhone 5 immediately as it came out. I'm a complete sucker for Apple products. And not necessarily a good indication that you're going to do a lot of money or make a lot of money. So What I nowadays say to people who think about this problem is that you should have separate test groups and separate test audiences and groups of test customers that represent a different kind of demographic. It's okay to have your fanboy group, but you should also have a separate group that's a complete like side section, cross-section of your desired target audience. And there should be somebody in there who also hates you. And you have every variety of a person hating you up to the real fanboy, and it makes more sense to test everything on these kind of people. And what we do with the build, measure, learn loop that I showed earlier is that we try to measure the real impacts. So we don't just listen to people giving us qualitative feedback, like showing them this product and asking that, do you think this is nice? And then he says, yeah, it looks nice. This has no value to us. That we can actually do better than just asking, is this nice? That we can give this clicker to somebody and we can sit in the audience and time how fast this product is being used. And we use quantitative feedback much more than qualitative feedback nowadays. And when you use quantitative feedback in a kind of scientific way with a test group that has all the demographics in there, then it kind of acts as a risk limiting, risk decreasing factor, and it makes it easier for you to hit the target. It's more realistic that way.
I like the idea of no business plans, but if it's like a complete new idea and you have to have like market research or all the numbers, I would have like no clue if I don't have the new market idea yet. How would it work?
If you're building something completely new and need investor money for it, then yeah, it might be okay to do market research, but it's even better to pilot it in some way and do a minimum viable product if you can. Some people think that it's impossible to execute on their plans without millions and millions of funding, but that's usually not true unless you are building something like maybe teleportation or flying cars or gravity-based communication technology or something completely futuristic and insane. Most of the things that companies do these days or try to do these days can really be tried out with just a couple of €1,000 or even less than that, just with people donating some time into it. And actually, what I've discovered that's even more impressive to investors, they might like market research to a degree, but they love real metrics. They love real data. That if you have a company going to an investor and saying that we think of changing the world and we think that this is a big opportunity, we have a little bit of market research saying that this will be a market of billions, but never mind that, we've already tested this. We already spent like 2 weekends together drinking beer and we programmed this product, and here are the results. That this is how we tested it, how many customers joined up, this is how much money we made out of it. We got 270 customers and they made us €1,100. And these are the metrics inside there. And if you come up with real test data like this, investors will love that much more than they do market research. And if it's good data, if it validates your hypothesis, primarily you should have 2 hypotheses. You should have a hypothesis about value that you're providing to your customers in every kind of way that you can imagine how to provide value to them, or you should basically list every way that you think that your product is going to be valuable to your customers. And then the other hypothesis is growth. How you are going to grow, every single way that you can think of how this thing will take over the world and become a raging success. And you should write down these 2 lists, value hypothesis and growth hypothesis, and then test the heck out of this list. Test every single thing on that list, like is this a fact, is this a fact, is this true, is this like completely fake, that we just drank too much beer and we just came up with this thing but it's not real. Next one, it's not real either, but then the next one is a fact. And you test through the whole list like this, and you take those results, you take that validated learning and the description of your learning journey, you take that to an investor and basically say to them that, look, we have this great team, this is what we've already done, with a little bit of money we can do 100 times as much, and we are trying so hard and iterating so rapidly that our success basically will be certain. That here's all the data, look at yourself, give us $500,000 and we'll go win this thing. And it turns out quite frequently they do give you the money, because seeing somebody learn at a rapid pace and being and being able to prove that through the results that you've measured, it is really impressive. They love it. They like it a lot. Did this answer your question?
Any last questions? Yeah, over there.
Thanks for the great talk. I just started to wonder, you talked about being ahead of time. You had a product which is mainstream basically today.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has an idea or a product which they want to do, but it is ahead of time, then what suggestions do you have?
There's an entrepreneur in the US called Elon Musk, and he's one of my favorite idolic guys. I've never met the guy, but I would very much like to meet him. He's founded PayPal, and after founding PayPal, he founded Tesla Motors, and after Tesla Motors, he founded SpaceX. So the first company was a pioneer in internet payments. The second company was doing the world's first electric cars that normal consumers can buy, and the third company is doing world's first commercial spacecraft and space rockets. And they've all been really successful company, and Elon is worth a couple of billion these days, that he's been a hugely successful guy. And what he's, for example, done has everything to do with this build, measure, learn loop. That he starts with a vision of what the world of tomorrow will look like, but the problem that they're solving is completely unknown, and also the solution is completely unknown. Like if you start building commercial spacecrafts, you don't know what precisely is the problem that you're going to encounter, or what is the problem that you're going to even try to solve, and you don't know specifically what's the solution either. So like both ends of your equation are completely open, and you start with this kind of situation, and what he's done, and many people like him have done, is that they iterate their way into discovering the answers. That it doesn't, it comes from vision, that they have a bold vision that we think that commercial spacecraft, for example, are possible, but they don't know the details how they are going to be possible or in what way they are going to be possible. This is all unknown. And with their bold vision, they discover all the details by going through this build, measure, learn loop. And they just do that long enough, die trying, or then they discover the details. This is pretty much what they do. And there are quite a few products that are as visionary as electric cars and commercial spacecraft and world-changing new things. Not that many products are actually in this category, that you have to be really mentally critical before you place your own product into such a visionary category. That typically it's more commonplace that companies need to build or are trying to build. I mean, look at me, I built social networking websites and basically commonplace crap. None of this is as life-changing as electric cars or commercial spacecraft is.
All right. Last question. Gentleman in the yellow t-shirt.
Hello. Actually, it comes from the end of the last answer. Would you like to be part of world-changing idea, or you leave it to the thinkers?
Sure. I think I'm heading that way eventually and unavoidably. This is kind of in my future, I'm sure. And now I'm involved currently today with about 10 different companies. Some of they have like a varying degree of visionarity in there. Some are really, really big on the vision, and some are really close to everyday things, just solving normal problems and making a business out of that. And these 10 companies keep me relatively busy, but in a hobby kind of way, that it's not a full-time engagement, and there's always time for something greater. That you should always think in a manner that you are willing to dump the old stuff to do something even better. It's a good idea. So if you have something excellent in mind, I'm open to suggestions, and I think I'm heading to that way myself. I've now co-founded, was it 5 or 6 companies? I don't remember my own stats even. But anyways, I'm going to probably co-found a couple of new companies in the future as well, and going towards this more visionary direction, definitely.
All right. So I would like to ask a big round of applause for Taneli. Taneli, thanks so much for your inspiring talk. I loved it. I hope you come back soon again to visit us. Here's a small present.
Thank you.